Disney trips to Redland and all that's in between. On the MIC, it's the KEY to recall what we see. Like a magic trick can take you back, so open sesame. Come with us, we'll take a ride through epic memories. It's that nostalgia that hits your heart and gets you every time. That do you remember? Makes you laugh and sometimes makes you cry. It's the pops, the shows, the shops. Frank and Jen don't stop. Welcome everybody to Dillos Pop.
This is Dillos Pop on a theme park Thursday here at our YouTube channel. She is Jen.
Hello.
And I am Frank, and it's been a while since we've done one of these Dillos Pop.
How long has it been? June? Was June our last one?
Yeah, I think when Ted Lasso concluded, we rushed to the live stream and recorded a Ted Lasso wrap up. And what month is this now?
I don't know. September, allegedly.
Correct. And here we are. We're back for about an hour here. Thanks for checking us out with the live stream. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is our, and we're so sometimes, I mean, a lot of times we're recording these at dillosdizresort.com, which is more behind the scenes.
Mhm.
But today we're live on YouTube. Like,
Yes.
what? Sometimes I forget, and sometimes I'm like, oh, we're to the public. The public can see us today.
That's right. It's as if we were motivated by our meetup in Walt Disney World.
Right, because of course, like everything else, this was planned last minute. This morning, as Frank and I are texting, we're going back and forth about things, and I'm like, should we do a pop episode tonight? Should we just do that?
You want to do it? All right, let's go. And Mrs. Dillo is out of town, which always allows for some. I got the living room. I got space. The air circulation is better in this New York City apartment. Still, nice day outside today. It was just as if they were warning us that autumn is coming.
Right, it's starting. The hint of it is in the air.
So, when we did the Ted Lasso episode, the next pop episode we were considering doing was a Marvelous Mrs. Maisel wrap up.
Yes.
Maisel had just concluded Memorial Day weekend, and we were like, well, we want to do a whole dedicated Mrs. Maisel episode, but then 3 months passed, and we're like, is anyone gonna...
Does anyone remember that show?
So we decided that, I titled it and just put it up, that we would call this episode, I Know What You Streamed This Summer.
Yeah.
Because with the strikes and everything going on, you're pretty much heading to your favorite streaming. I mean, most of us are unplugged. Not me with my cable bill. My no ESPN on my cable bill.
What are you doing?
But we thought we would take some time to talk about some of the shows that are out there that we were watching over the summer. That we'll talk a little bit about Mrs. Maisel. We'll talk about shows that we're watching and shows that we want to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And all the while, hopefully here, as people pick up in the chat, drop in so what they've been watching and what they want to watch as well. So that's the plan. But Jen, this is a Theme Park Thursday. We did drop a Theme Park Thursday podcast in the audio feed this morning, and that was about the Destination D23 reveals, announcements, changes forthcoming. That all happened last weekend, but there were two that I left out and that were not in the article I was referencing. And then afterwards, I was like, oh, I was supposed to talk about these two things. So I want to hit them quick here as we ease into things. The first is that Soarin' Over California is coming back to Epcot Limited starting later in September. I think it's the 22nd, but I don't have my reference here to check that. But I mean, do we just not need the option to have Soarin' Over California for the rest of our lives?
I mean, I think so, right?
I mean, there's nothing that we have, a crooked Eiffel Tower aside, but we don't have anything against soaring around the world, right?
No.
Yeah, but you say it like that, and you kind of do.
Oh, well, I think, did it need to be changed?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know that it needed the change, but I'm also like, I'm fine with it. It's not like I am not going on that now that it's around the world. I'm kind of indifferent about like, all right.
Yeah, and I think it's a matter of, and we talked about this on the podcast today.
What?
Did you pick that motorcycle coming through?
Oh, I didn't. I was
apartment?
like, what's
Oh,
happening?
apologies for those of you watching on a live stream, but it's one of those things where what's going to drive, I think a lot of these announcements, some of these announcements had to do with how are you going to put butts in seats?
Hmm.
Talked about country bears. How are you going to put more butts in seats? We talked about, the tough to be a bug to be replaced by Zootopia. Maybe that put more butts in the seats. I even mentioned if Indiana Jones goes into the animal kingdom, would we lose the stunt spectacular over at Hollywood Studios? But you know what? There were a lot of butts in the seats when we were there at 3:15 last Saturday.
Oh, for sure. I think while we were sitting there, I'm like, every time we're in here, I'm like, the park is this crowded. I didn't even realize.
Right? You see like the full
Yeah.
epic theater, and you're like, whoa, there's a lot of people
Hmm.
here. So I don't know about that one because that theater is still putting butts in seats.
Yeah.
So when talking about Soarin', you go back 12 years when it was mayhem at Soarin'. People ran to Soarin' every morning, and then they added the third extension or whatever it was that
Hmm.
helped alleviate the line a little bit. I feel like I've been getting through Soarin' pretty quick over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So it's not driving the traffic that it once was, I don't think. But maybe it is because it's the 3 buildings. I don't really know. I don't have a clicker.
I- Why don't you have a clicker? I used to have a clicker at Interventions. Oh, that just brought back a memory. Where I would have to click of how many people were watching the demo. And let me tell you, if you glanced over, you counted. Okay. But back in the day when Soren, those first couple of years of Soren, those lines were well into the land. You do not see that anymore. I mean, that's
Right.
not a thing. So
That's not a thing.
no.
So just a couple of things about it. I'm like, okay, that's going to drive some traffic in there for a little while during Food and Wine. I think that's good.
Mhm.
I mean, it only lasted 3 days with the Figment meet and greet, I think, but we can talk about that another time. But I also kind of want, what I really like about Star Tours, because they announced Ahsoka for Star Tours next year as having an appearance, as the adventure continues, is that they keep freshening up the attraction just enough to make you want to go back over and over again.
Mhm.
And I just think Soarin' over, like, just have the option.
Right.
Just have the option of going to California or going around the world. Why
I
not?
think it should be like the Horizons. You had to pick your ending.
Yeah.
It's like that.
So I wanted to touch base on that because we played the music to Soarin', the OG Soarin' a lot through the speakers of the pool at the Hamptons a couple of weeks
We
back.
did. Uh-huh.
Which, if you're not at our resort or listen to the podcast, you're like, who are these people who go to the Hamptons? It's a longer story. We're not
Yes.
going to get into right now.
Maybe we should have done a Dillos pop episode from the Hamptons and like gone out into the Hamptons to see if we could see anybody. But instead, we just stayed in a backyard the whole
You
time
just-
and loved every second of it.
That's who we are. That's what we do. And so that was the first one. The second one was the announcement that the Nighttime Spectacular at Epcot that will be replacing Epcot Forever, which replaced Harmonious, which replaced Epcot Forever, will be called Luminous. Luminous. I don't know. I don't want to do like a Harry Potter curse in here, but Luminous to replace Epcot Forever, because you couldn't have
Forever?
Luminous replace Harmonious. That would be ridiculous. Haha! Didn't even mean to say ridiculous in that sentence right there.
Same,
I
but you wanted me to
apologize
work.
to everyone
It
watching
all
right now.
worked. Do you? I if you did you have a plan? They had a plan, right? Because they had the barges, which we don't speak of. But so I guess they had a plan coming out of Illuminations. But right now, I feel like, did you not have a plan? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing with all of get it together, Epcot? Because we can't be playing these games in 2023 with social media and everyone talking about every little thing that happens in the parks and every little change and all the announcements, and then they're doing announcements with their blue skying. Like, you got to just get it together. You can make an announcement. That's what we do, and stick to that. And you're making all these changes. And then personally, I Jeff was saying luminous forever coming fall
Forever.
2028. It's like then illuminations, and now there's lumin. Okay, like it's a little too much. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah, and it's a better name than Harmonious, but I think a lot of people got used to Harmonious in the short time. It didn't get used to the barges, got used to the show Harmonious
Mm-hmm.
in the time. But is this a better name than Harmonious? I don't. I don't think so. But I'm not here to rail against it. I'm only wondering the why. I felt like, oh, we're really gonna do something here. All right, we don't have time to do anything. We gotta call it something. Oh, about Luminous. That was on the list with Harmonious. Let's keep it. Okay, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel like happened.
Yeah, I mean, and I love Epcot. I love Epcot at night, especially walking around Epcot at night is so good. I don't like the all like you don't seem like you know what you're doing, and I don't like that feeling from Disney. Although I guess some could argue they make you feel like that a lot, but with this, it's a little
Yeah,
something.
and
But
it's not I still miss Illumination. I mean, the most recent incarnations of Illuminations over the, it's not my 1988 Illuminations. That's my Illuminations.
hashtag not my illuminations.
Not that should be a start. Not my Harmonious. Not my Illuminations. Luminous, not my Illuminations. Epcot Forever, not my Illuminations.
Yeah.
And so though I wanted to touch on those two because all of a sudden they just popped up in my head as I was walking around, and I was like, oh, wait, we didn't talk about that on the podcast today, so we need to make mention on this Theme Park Thursday night.
And I think that's fair because a lot of times on Theme Park Thursday, we talk a lot of pop things. And
Right.
So we're like, but this is not a Dillos pop episode. So we had to have some crossover.
There had to be a trade-off. So what we're actually here to do 12 minutes into the hour is to talk about what we've been streaming over the summer. I thought that there's two that we could talk about, one of which is going to be The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, even though that ended Memorial Day weekend. That's when the real summer movie season starts in my house, not at the beginning of April or whatever they do these days. So the summer starts for me Memorial Day weekend, but and then we'll touch on one series that I know we both watched, and then we'll probably do one of each, and then we'll open it up a little more about what we might want to watch in the future.
Sure.
So let's take it all the way back to The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which we were a big fan of from the jump, and it was a nostalgic. You have the married couple, the happy married couple. It goes awry due to some infidelity, which of course is my favorite trope in any TV show or movie, and it goes from there where Mrs. Maisel starts her journey as a comedian and as a stand-up. And, I think it's the two things I want to say before I pass it over to you. The final season was a lot of risk, which I really appreciate. I don't know if it was what I was hopeful for, but the other thing about it, and I've said it to anyone I talk to about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, is that I feel very much that that little year we call 2020 really stifled the momentum of the show. And I think a lot of things pivoted as they did during those times, that 2020, 2021 year, those years that caused the show to maybe not feel as seamless as it did in those early seasons. Not to say that it still wasn't brilliantly performed. The characters are awesome. And it had a beginning, middle, and end. There's nothing too crazy to really shake your finger at. But I feel that little pull that sometimes you get when things are just a little off. And there's shows that their final episode doesn't feel at all like the entire series. Like
Mhm.
you can tell that they're filming the final episode, or they're filming it at a time that they didn't film any of the other shows, so they have different haircuts or something, and it's like weird.
Yeah.
And I felt like the whole final season was like that. That they all
Mhm.
got haircuts and and look different or something. And that's and in some ways based on the timeline, maybe a little bit. But I'll turn it over to you, Jen, and give me your thoughts of the marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Um, yeah, I agree that 2020 put a damper on things a bit. I also wonder if there had been a bigger plan or a longer plan for the show, or did they kind of know how they were going to wrap it up? There's Ted Lasso, there's Schitt's Creek, where they kind of knew here's what we're working with and here's where we're telling our story, and that's that. And I wonder if this was always the plan,
Mhm.
or how much they did have to pivot from um, from everything because of 2020.
Right.
So, I agree that in the final season, and by the way, we will be giving spoilers because we are
Mm,
3 months out, and,
mhm.
so if you haven't watched Maisel, come back later when we're talking about other shows, but, for now, that's what we're talking about. But, the flash forwards in the entire final season were interesting.
Mhm.
It was definitely a different approach. I was not expecting it,
Yeah.
expecting them to go that way. There was something I was okay with about it, but then I was like, well, if we're gonna do this, then I want more of it, because then I felt like it was too spotty. I don't know.
Yeah.
I felt like then you're not doing enough in the future and coming back, or, oh, so you told this story, but then what about, okay, so these are the kids. Okay, but wait, didn't she just open the whole thing with the daughter? And
Right.
I feel like we didn't get enough of the daughter then.
Right.
Like later.
Mhm.
There was just a lot of missteps, I feel like, when it came to the flash forward stuff. I didn't hate it, but,
Right.
like, I don't know, there was something missing.
Yeah, I think that's really what it boils down to, and I don't know if it's that they ran out of time, they didn't have it fully fleshed out, was it they nobody could really commit past 2023, in terms of filming or anything like that.
Mhm,
So, yeah, it felt very, and again, I don't there's nothing invariably wrong with what they did. I appreciated you know, uh a lot of people are like, I want answers. I want to know what happens. What goes on?
mhm,
Like they said, okay, we're gonna give you some of that, but it also couldn't take away from the core of the show.
mhm,
So it was I I was fascinated. For a show, I think my biggest thing, I pray that it could have happened, but for a show that took a romanticized approach to Lenny Bruce,
mhm.
that I wish we didn't get a fictional late night talk show host to kind of take me out of the element.
Yeah.
If you want me to suspend my disbelief that Lenny Bruce is this incredible actor from shout out to Jeffers Canadian show Slings and Arrows, where if
Mhm,
you watch season 1, him and Rachel McAdams are incredible together,
mm,
and that was 20 years ago.
mhm,
So that for finally Luke Kirby to kind of get his due and take on this role and be amazing.
mhm,
And you know, if I'm going to suspend my disbelief in this creation of
mhm,
Lenny Bruce, it became harder to suspend my disbelief about the late night talk show. And they were going for Carson, and I'm
mhm.
sure they might have tried
Yeah,
to do that. It would have been so awesome if they
yeah,
were able to kind of create a similar version of Johnny Carson for the purposes of the final season.
yeah, I agree with that. It was also odd, although, I feel like, Amy Sherman Palladino was, taking a lot of background from, I think, Joan Rivers, right, and some other
Mhm.
comedians,
Right,
um, to create Mrs. Maisel.
right.
You're still creating these new characters, and then to have an actual Lenny Bruce was like, oh, this is interesting that
Right.
you
Yeah.
did this, but we're not going to have any other real people unless you're
Yeah.
seeing them kind of in clips or whatever. For the final season, one, I wanted so much more of him, but I understand with the years they're talking, it was
Mhm.
hard to do that because
Right.
now you're balancing the reality versus this make-believe world.
Mhm.
But I was also happy that we didn't see too much of the end of him. Like
Right.
I didn't want that because they're so good together and they're so good on screen together. And I just wanted more of that, not to see like his down spiral.
Right. Yeah. Which is where it could have made, it could have very easily been, we're going to lean into what actually happened to Lenny Bruce in the
Mhm.
end. But it actually, I mean, it could have actually inspired her to, to lift herself up
Yes.
and become more because because of what happens. It could have
Mhm.
gone that way very easily. Deepak Rob is here saying he wants a Lenny Bruce story. And, you know, I think I've said it on the podcast. I'm not sure because da 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 really blurs the lines. And that season 3 when they're in Miami and they're in the club,
Mhm.
dance, and then they walk back to the
This whole
motel.
circle.
It is probably the greatest 10 minutes of television ever,
Mhm.
and not much is happening. But
Mhm.
there's so much happening in those
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And I could watch those 10 minutes forever forever because it is just so indicative of their chemistry and
Mhm.
the characters and what was written for those characters beforehand and the performers behind the characters. Yeah, they didn't have to do much
Yeah.
to make an incredible 10 minutes of television. And, so to me, uh, as much as I love, Tony Shalhoub's character was great, so many of these characters were great. Uh, but that those 10 minutes are which is funny because it's right in the middle of season 3, right? So it's basically the center of the series
Mhm.
is what the core of that show was. And the flash forwards aside, in this reboot life we live in, uh and you see like the photo shoots that they were doing, just like I feel like 10 years from now, I still think they could do a 70s version of Mad Men with Don
Mhm.
Draper.
Oh
I
yeah.
still think they could do, because we know we had a family member who was in the biz during the 70s and 80s. I'm sure
Mhm.
in the 80s you could do a Don Draper version,
Yeah.
of in the advertising world in the 80s. Like I want to see that. So that was also my thing with Maisel. It was like I would have loved to have seen 10 years from now, naturally a little older,
Mhm.
them what are they doing now? And then do it for and is Amazon going away? I doubt it. But
Right.
uh they have the money if they want with all these reboots going on. I appreciate that they wanted to show where the stories went.
Mhm.
I don't know if they really had to do it because the future is out there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you probably could have just kept it in the timeline and it still could have played out and been awesome. Um I think well, I want to go like into the supporting cast, but maybe I'll wait a second. But because a lot of people after the finale, I felt we're talking about how Midge ends up, and she's
Mhm.
kind of alone, and
Right.
like
Yeah.
this is it. To me, obviously, I'm not a comedian or in the world, surprise to no one, but I appreciate that world. And so I enjoy watching stand up specials and I enjoy hearing interviews of comedians and
Mhm.
podcasts and radio sometimes and just learning more about their world. But also, what I have picked up along the way is a lot of the comedians are sometimes living in a lonely world where they're on the road a lot by themselves, just going city to city,
Mhm.
or they had kind of a rough upbringing and so this is their outlet now, or they are have a lot of inner demons they're dealing with. So I feel like during the years they're talking, to be a woman in comedy, I don't think it's crazy that she ended up this way.
Mhm.
She had to do things that were, probably cutthroat, and she had to make decisions and make moves that she probably wasn't expecting, but they resulted in being alone along
Yeah.
the way. I guess she had a bunch of marriages. We didn't really get to all those,
Right.
um, but if I can take that into the direction of Joel,
Mhm.
I would have loved to see what really happened with them over the years, because to me, as much as I love her and Lenny and I love them on screen together, and in that Miami episode, I was like, I don't want you guys to like get together though.
Right.
Like,
The will they
because
or
I
won't they?
don't.
It's like, oh, you didn't do that. You did the won't they. I love it.
Yes, yes. And so I love them together, but almost like this isn't like a love story. I don't know. It was a different kind of love story, maybe.
Mhm.
But to me, Joel was like, that was like her true love. And they were like, had like this friendship behind everything and supported each other even throughout their divorce and all of it, that they kind of teased that they were getting back together in real time towards the end of the show, but then like you never really saw it. And then it's like, what, you had 5 marriages? What do you mean? What happened with Joel? But then you see his picture, later
Yeah.
on. There's a lot of missing pieces when it comes to him, and I would love to know more about that. But I liked him. I felt like his story went off the rails a little bit for a while and then came
Yeah.
back around.
Mhm.
But I'll start with Joel, I guess, as the supporting cast. But
Yeah, and you know that it was going to test my patience if the road was going to lead them getting back together, and they did a good job of uh, kind of placing things along the way to keep them connected, and I thought that was really good. But I agree that his the middle portion, his act two of his story, I guess, if it's a 3-act play for him,
mhm.
is was and not I appreciated that he also found his way into the comedy variety
Uh-huh.
world in a different fashion. So
Mhm.
I appreciated that. And it had no business being as strong as Midge's story, obviously. And it also had to take a back seat because the Maisels were such a powerful couple. The parents, I should say.
Yes. Uh-huh.
There was so much for them to do that yeah, it felt pushed back and therefore weaker than the rest of the series.
Yeah. Um, One thing, I mean, we can talk about that finale a little more, but I loved both sets of parents. I mean, like that casting of both sets of
Mhm,
parents.
mhm,
What and that's the thing about everybody in that show. The casting
mhm.
was like perfection for
Yeah,
everybody. You
right.
didn't really feel like, oh, like
I
they
said
could
the
have done.
Maisels earlier. I'm sorry, I didn't mean the Maisels because well, the Maisels they're both great, but
Yeah,
I was referencing Midge's parents instead of
right,
Joel's parents. But now
right.
we're talking about Joel's parents.
I mean, there were times where it's like, can this just be a spinoff? Or even when all of them would be like at a table. I mean, to
Right,
me, uh, coming from Gilmore Girls with
right.
Amy Sherman Palladino, that those scenes, I could be like, "Oh, this is her. This is all her behind this scene," and you could feel that. But oh, see, now I'm out having
Right.
drag racing. Yeah, there you
That
go.
motorcycle that came through my apartment now going
He's now
down
driving down my
to
street. Um, yeah, so the parents, I feel like I could watch a whole spin-off of just them and like their backstories and more. Sometimes I wanted more of them,
mhm,
including the not the final scene, but when she's getting her big moment on stage,
right.
where were her parents? Why were
Right,
they not in that audience?
right.
It kind
Mhm.
of drives me a little crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there was I mean, again, I think it feels like they were under a crunch sometimes,
Yes.
and my first also for the many reasons that this show is special, in my mind,
Mhm.
whether it's the nostalgia, how it develops the world of the play, classic New York stand-up world, like all of that. Just it's so much of that late night talk. All of that stuff is my thing.
Yeah.
And and my first true, I had to go back to the office after a closure of the pandemic,
Mhm.
was so they could film a big climactic moment of the series.
Mhm.
That is like it just we're gonna get into the other love letter sometimes I consider to be of New York City,
Mhm.
but it is it was interesting how they have these kind of key moments and how New York is so figures in, and then you get again where I struggled with the suspension of disbelief of the late night talk show host, and then that something like that throws things out of whack, and you got little things around that along the way, but I felt like they were going and trying to deal with, even 2 years after the fact, a uh schedule that was difficult because whether it was testing or positive result, like I don't know anything
Mhm.
that happened,
Mhm.
but all that stuff was still going on for a very long time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um, yeah, and Val is mentioning in the chat that Rose getting the phone calls when she thought Midge didn't invite her.
Oh
It
yeah,
was all hilarious.
yeah,
Like, that's the thing. Whatever actually, because to me, I can't believe that they'd be like, "No, we're not gonna have her parents there, but we're gonna have Joel's parents. Like, we're gonna
right,
make sure everybody else is there except for her parents." So that's
yeah,
why I do believe that there had to be something going on behind the scenes,
right,
scheduling, COVID, whatever it was. Um, but what they did do with it and making it where it became this thing that she wasn't personally invited, hilarious to me.
hmm,
So, there is that balance too. And yeah, but what else did I have here? Abe, Tony Shalhoub, amazing. And so
hmm.
him in this season, his big journey to make sure now I'm blanking, what is the grandson's name, Midge's son,
Oh yeah,
um making sure he would be the genius of the family, and then
uh-huh.
it turns out it's the granddaughter.
That's so awesome.
Hilarious. Like,
Yeah,
it's so funny
hmm,
to me. Yeah, I just there were just so many of those moments, and so much of when things were happening when the parents of both sides were in the room. It was just awesome to watch every time they were on screen. But
yeah, and I often say, and again, the final episode of season 4 is
mhm.
so amazing, not because I just happened to be around when it, but but often when I talk about the series with other people, I will say, um, season 3 ended on a runway, and sometimes I feel like the show got left on the runway a little bit
Mhm,
and didn't really get to take off the way it meant to. Uh,
mhm.
and again, the show is great. The performances are great. So much of it's hilarious. But something it leaves me what if a lot,
Yeah,
and I don't know why.
yeah, it's our Magic Band Pluses, but what if it could?
What if it could?
I was gonna mention something else, I forgot.
Yep.
Okay, um, she has her big moment
Hmm,
on stage.
hmm.
Did you cry?
I did not cry. No,
Come
I.
on, come on.
Was I supposed to? I thought it was very cool, but again, I'm gonna say I had a big problem with the fictional talk show. I don't know why I couldn't escape it.
Uh-huh,
And it
uh-huh.
might be my own fault,
Mhm,
but it just might be me. But a lot of that felt inauthentic, which is funny because of how you had this characterization of Lenny Bruce. And again,
mhm,
somehow I was able to suspend that disbelief for many great reasons that the show provided. I did
mhm.
not suspend it for. Well, I couldn't even tell you his name right now. I want to say it's Carson Daly.
Gordon.
I know that's not his name. Gordon.
Carson
Gordon.
Daly. Gordon,
It's
the
not Gordon Ramsay because
Gordon
that's the
For
chef. Gordon Ford.
Gordon Ford? Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
Gordon Ramsay.
like, it's not even a good talk show host name. But no.
Mhm.
Um, but that's really where I sit with it. Like I was just like, oh, if this was Johnny Carson, it would have been so cool.
Yeah.
And just to get what they did with Lenny Bruce for Johnny Carson, I think would have been amazing. So the what if.
How could you not cry?
I'll have to go. I'll probably go back and watch the finale. Maybe I got it.
Just zone in on her and hearing her, and she's having her big moment. Come on.
No, she's amazing. Like
Yeah.
everything, again, remember when we both had that moment of like who she was in House of Cards?
Oh yeah.
And we were both like, what?
What? Yeah.
Because she's amazing. She was amazing on House of Cards too. We just didn't know it was her. And then
Yeah. Because she's so amazing.
Right. And so that, so that was part of it. It was that, everything I thought she did was amazing. So I feel like she could do no wrong.
And I also didn't realize that was her husband until probably the finale of the show.
Right, the producer guy.
The producer,
on Gordon Ford, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I leave it as maybe I probably didn't cry because of it's just always so good. So I don't know.
I mean, part of Dillo's pop might have to be going back to watch This Is Us, and I'm gonna need you to cry. I'm gonna need you to cry at some episodes.
I mean, things are a little different for me these days. I feel like so maybe listen, and that's not to say I cry at stuff. I probably don't cry at all the right things. I'm trying to think of something that like made me tear up recently, and I really can't right now.
I know something.
Oh,
you went live and you were playing the music to
Lady in the Water.
Yes.
That was in the movie club over at the Patreon.
I was like, what is happening right now? What's going on?
That music makes me cry. And I don't the end of that movie is so good. And everything about it hits the right way. Just is perfect to me. And I know people don't like it, and that's the majority. I think I'm sure Rotten Tomatoes has it at a good 32% or something. Yeah. But that's true. I did cry at the resort on the movie club because of the
See what you guys are missing at the resort?
Oh my god!
Anyone watching this back, join DillosDizResort.com and see Frank cry.
I did right, but that's like a weird thing. I think I'm trying to think if there's anything else that really not right now.
Did your duet on TikTok make you cry with your Star Wars music?
No, that was that music. That's more of Goosebumps than it's crying. But that's so awesome. If you don't know this TikTok, everyone out there, it started with one musician who plays. Maybe it's the French horn. I don't know if it's the French horn. And she's playing the notes of the sunset in Star Wars when Luke looks out at the twin suns. And so she does this on her own TikTok, and then this violinist then duets it and then joins in, and it's perfect. And then this other guy did the same thing. And it's just John Williams is a god, and that music is amazing. So. When's the next movie club again? Great question, Jeffers. It's in the works. Yeah, and maybe rebranded to the Fedora Club. We'll see. I'm thinking about it.
Whoa, big announcements, not official, just Blue Sky.
No, Blue Sky. No, just like Disney. Destination Dillos right here.
We should probably do. Didn't we do that one time that we were kind of doing our own? But I think we should do Destination Dillos and come up with some things for the resort.
Sounds like a 300th episode to me.
I did want to just make mention before we close out Maisel that I was saying, we're saying she's amazing, and Lexi said she's not amazing. She's marvelous. So true. But fair. Even going one step further, she's possible amazing. Love it.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Just to say, I will never be able to pronounce her last name though. Rachel. I can't. I don't know how to say it.
Oh yeah, I know.
Can't do it.
I can't do it either.
Yeah. So Destination Dillos, right? How do we come up with so many names for things?
Too many names. We have all the names for things.
All the names.
Yes, all the names.
Goodness. So, when we talk about Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and when we talked about it with Mad Men over the years, and even Seinfeld and Friends are not the same way, but Sex in the City.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in. Jen and I have two different approaches to Sex in the City.
Mm-hmm.
My approach, I'll go first because mine's random, right? Is that I was living in Orlando when Sex and the City started in the mid to late 90s there, whenever it started. And it made me, and I was not one who went to New York City, went to into Manhattan from Long Island a lot when I was a kid. But the kind of on the spot, scenic locations of Sex and
Mhm.
the City made me miss New York. And quickly, I was like, oh, I think I got to go back to New York. And seeing how romanticized New York City was in Sex and the City, made me a watcher
Mhm.
of that series. So we're going to get into a little bit of And Just Like That. And maybe nobody here has been watching And Just Like That. So
Mhm.
we'll try to move quickly.
Yeah.
But Jen, give us all your history with Sex and the City.
I'm trying to
And
remember,
at
like,
home.
and what?
As it is at home, too, between you and Mr. Snidillo. I want it all.
Yeah. That's right. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, maybe we should have had him on for this segment. He would get too angry though, so he can't be here for this segment. Um, I'm trying to remember like when I really started watching it because I didn't start it in the beginning. I came in probably a few seasons later and then went back. And then I think I was just thinking as you were talking, I think I have the book, the pink book with all the DVDs of the entire series. I think it's
Oh,
down here.
nice.
I think Mr. Snidillo gave that to me like way, 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 way back in the day. But so I came in a little late to it, but went back. I have seen every episode 1,000 times by now. Also, when the first movie was being filmed, I was working in the city at that time. I was
Mhm.
working at the Palm Store in Rockefeller Center.
Right.
And around the corner at Christie's, they were filming a scene for like 2 days. And I almost feel like it was over a weekend or something, which is, I feel like maybe it was weird, but maybe not because it's New York City and they're filming all the time. So the girl, my coworker that I was working with, we kept switching out. Probably shouldn't have been doing that, but we kept switching out. One would stay in the store and cover that, and the other would go and check out the filming. So I would go and I don't know where the pictures I took are because either I took them on my Palm Trio phone or maybe
Yes, the Palm
on
Trio.
like an old digital camera somewhere. I'm not sure, but I remember taking pictures because I saw them all when they did that walk to Christie's, like 100 times. So I got to see that, which was very cool. So to me, the whole show has a big history. Mr. Snidillo has also watched every episode. He is not a fan of Carrie Bradshaw.
Mm-hmm.
He points out all of the flaws she has, all of the mishaps she has, how she treats her friends and her partners, and he just everything she does, he kind of gets annoyed by. However, I feel like I have balanced him out a little bit to go, let's look at the big picture here, especially in the And Just Like That series that I'll
Mm-hmm.
play it out because to me, as we bring it full circle, that And Just Like That, the first season seemed a little like, oh, you guys are really coming in strong here. And I don't know, it's not having the same vibe. People
Mm-hmm.
are having a lot of mixed feelings. Where I think
Mm-hmm.
season 2, they tried to like chill everyone out and kind of bring it back to its roots while also recognizing how many years have gone on here. And I think with that, Carrie has also chilled out a little bit and isn't as out there, giving way for some other characters to go out there. But so I would say it has a large presence in this home. And I think this first season, I think I was recording some of Mr. Snidillo's rants that he didn't realize I was recording. I have to go back and see if I have those. Maybe I'll have to drop those in the resort because I was like, do I need to post this on TikTok?
That'd be
So
great.
yeah, but
Yeah, so we won't get into spoilers. And Lexi is definitely in the boat that I feel like many Sex and the City fans are like, I'm not gonna watch this if it's gonna mess up how I feel about the show. Because we how long have we been doing the reboot era now? 6-7
uh-huh.
years.
Mhm.
I don't. I thought I was gonna be okay with the Roseanne / the Connors reboot, and it's there's parts that I watch that I'm like, oh, this is really good. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, can I go back 30 years? And then
Mm-hmm.
the Will and Grace reboot I thought was going to be really good, and it came and went very quickly. So when you see, and how it rewrites history a little bit is a little troublesome for me in
Mm-hmm.
general. And so there's that. And I feel like a lot of these shows don't go in. Maybe they go in with a plan, but it doesn't come across that way. And that's this series, and just like that, it was not my plan to watch, but it was on here in the house. So I do a lot of this. I'm walking through a room, or I'm down a hallway,
Right.
like what's happening right now? I'm on my phone, but am I watching? So that's how I've watched most of this series. And agreed, I think by the end of the second season here, that just happened a couple weeks back, I feel like it did just take us 2 years to level out and be okay. This is what the show is.
Right.
I thought it was kind of there, but then they announced season 3, and I was like, I don't. It ended well, I think. Get out. But money's money.
But that, I think, is the point of this entire franchise. The whole series of Sex and the City, it ended well. It had a good ending. Everyone's stories were tied up with a nice bow. You did not need the first movie. You didn't need the second movie, and you don't need this series. You don't need any of it. Have I watched all of it? Yup. And that's why they keep doing it, right? Because all of us are still
Right, because
watching.
it's one of those bad relationships where you're just like, I dedicated a lot of time to this. I have to see it through.
Yeah.
And am I still watching? Yes, also, even though I'm like halfway. But I'm watching, and because there are things about a lot of the characters that I like, but that some of the characters that I do like are now driving me crazy. And I'm like, Miranda, I know how you were on the first series, but what's happening? And it just some things.
Yes, Val, everyone's questioning their choices. I will say that. I think I saw a TikTok where someone was basically saying, like, this isn't a good show. Why am I waiting every week for it? And I think that's how all of us feel. Like, I'm not waiting for when it drops on Thursdays, I think it is. But I am aware that it's dropping on that day, and I'm watching it within 24 hours. Like, what's happening? I don't care that much, but here I am, and now I can't even binge it. I gotta wait the week. Why don't I just binge them all? Nope, I'm watching it week to week. Okay.
And that's but that's with all of this, and it's so funny that, again, it was a show that I was surprised that I liked when I was younger, and how I connected to New York City because of it. So again, I feel like it's kind of fun to see, even though I live here. Oh, where are they going? What are they going to visit? What are they going to do? I still have that same kind of feeling about it. So there's things that I like. So I'm not here to kill it all. We're watching it. There's things
we're watching it every week.
We're regular viewers.
Yeah. To that point, though, of New York, and Maisel, I can do a whole connection here. I didn't watch, and this isn't going to be a long tangent at all because I can stop it quickly, but I never watched the original Gossip Girl. I don't know why.
Right.
I just never had gotten into it. But when they did the reboot of that on HBO, for some reason, I put it on going, let me see if I can watch this or just check it out, and without knowing anything really of Gossip Girl. And I watched it. I watched the whole, I think they only did 2 seasons and then it got canceled. But is his name Lou Kirby? The Lenny Bruce?
Yeah.
Yes, he was on it, right? So he was a dad on the show. So I loved that because I'm like, oh my God, like he's such a New York actor, right? So you start seeing him on all the New York shows, but you see a lot of New York on Gossip Girl as well, and the surrounding areas. So I always enjoy that too. So I just want to make mention of that.
Before I give a tangent real quick, Lexi, I feel like none of these reboots have a plan at all. I think they're just banking on the nostalgia. How dare you? Aren't we banking on the nostalgia? What are we talking about is nostalgia. We love the nostalgia.
Yeah.
This morning, the 7-year-old was watching. I guess she's been watching it over a couple of days. The end of the live action Beauty and the Beast.
Mm.
So at some point she, they're all become spoilers. Beauty and the Beast. They become human again in the end, and so the one that really got her, because I realized I haven't said it to her, and I was like, you know who Lemire is? And she's like, no. And I was like, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And she's like, what are you doing to me right now? But she gets so lost in it that, and she's on a big Harry Potter kick. She's in the middle of the 6th book. The whole, she's watched 4 of the movies, but she still sees the live action Belle as Belle and not as Hermione, which, is so interesting. And just because I'll talk about a little bit something at the end, but to see all these actors, in her mind and they're still the characters. And that's a lot about what Sex and the City is. It's like, it's still about the characters. Maisel is about the characters, the plots and should the story have gone left instead of right. And, we watch these shows because of the characters and in most cases, the location is a character. The island on Lost was a character.
Yes.
New York City is often a character. And those are the things we come back to, and you wonder why. Like, you guys talk about Disney most of the time. Why are we doing this pop stuff? It's because these things, these characters and how they shape this world of the play, which we often said on Fedora Clubs, is we get that from going to Disney and these theme plans and all that. Like, that's important to us. And so, yeah, we're going to get sucked into, and just like that, we're sucked into your show. And because of the characters and the investment we put in.
Yeah, for sure.
Jen has one series that I haven't watched that she'll talk about. She know that she's going to talk about this, but probably no spoilers. So it's like you're going to give like your recommendation, I guess.
Sure.
And then I'll talk about one that you've only sort of watched so far. I won't give out that many spoilers. Maybe I'll come revisit it here on the YouTube channel another time. But I can't not talk about the show I'm currently streaming. So I'm going to pass it to Jen first before we get to my spoiler-free discussion of the show I'm currently streaming.
Okay, so maybe I'll do a quick thing on the two shows, that I just finished streaming because they were pretty close to each other. And one, I obviously learned from TikTok, everybody, because I saw people. I'm a big coming of age fan, right? You give me a movie that's a coming of age movie or a show, I'm all in. I love it. Let's not talk about how old I am and how I'm not the age of the characters I'm watching. What do you mean? Yes, I am. So there's some of that. But I started hearing about this show called, The Summer I Turned Pretty, which is based on a series of books, which I probably have to read now. And so I went all in on that on Amazon Prime. The first night, you guys know, if maybe some of you watching later might not know me. Those in the chat know me well enough to know I enjoy an early bedtime. I don't like to stay up late. The first time I put the show on, I watched the first 4 episodes. Like, I binged them and I was all in. I was like, well, I want to keep watching this. So I binged all of it pretty quick. They just wrapped up the 2nd season. I think they're going to have a 3rd season. But the writer's strike, so I don't know when that's actually going to happen. Right. And there was some confusion as to whether they had filmed some already, but I don't think they did. But, it is based on the books. It is coming of age. They're all finishing high school and whatever it is. And there's the love triangles and, all these things. There's a lot of twists and turns along the way, but I enjoyed it immensely. So if you're like me and enjoy reading a book by the pool, this is that type of book that you would read. So now it's a show. So I would recommend that. But I also went through and watched Smartless, which is on, I think it's on HBO. It might be on Prime too. I'm not sure. But it is the documentary behind the podcast Smartless with Jason Bateman, Will Arnett, and Sean Hayes. And so I really enjoyed that as well, and seeing their dynamic and their interactions. And I found it, I was the first episode, I was probably laughing more than anything. But then as the show went on, I'm like hearing some of their conversations more and more. Like I'm all in on like the behind the scenes stuff. So I enjoyed that as well. So those are the 2 that I just finished, and then we can touch on others later that, like, I still watch here and there. But
Yeah, the ones that we've talked about most often this summer has been The Diplomat, which was on Netflix. It's still on Netflix with Kerry Russell, which we're always going to shout out Kerry Russell, former member of the
Yes.
all new Mickey Mouse Club. So Jen hung out with her next to an elevator.
We're best friends.
And so the one that and Jen mentioned the writer's strike, so there's this other element of we're gonna need shows to watch. So we only got a few episodes into the League of Their Own series, since you mentioned Amazon Prime, and so we're in the middle of that. I'm hoping that we could pick it up at some point without having tried to remember what happened previously, but that feels like, I'm sure it was at the beginning of this calendar year, but feels like 100 years ago right now. So those are the two that were one that we have to get back to, one that we tried doing Succession. We did 2 episodes of that. We need some lighter fare. So I'm hoping that at some point we would get into that, but the drama, and we were mentioning in our one channel Discord connected to DillosDisResort.com, Jeffers mentioned Only Murders in the Building, which I don't know how I haven't watched that show yet.
I know, same. Yeah. And it's crazy that we haven't watched it.
Yeah. So that's on the list, and Poker Face on the Peacock is on my list, because I enjoy the marketing campaign has won me over a few months back, but I'm like, I have to watch that one. But clearly, because a couple hours ago I finally just watched Ahsoka episode 5. Jen has watched one whole episode so far, so we're not going to go too deep into the spoilers, but I'm going to have to do like a full Ahsoka talk at some point in this format, because one is the 7-year-old, she loves it. Like, there's just so much in this episode 5 that she, like, jaw dropped moment, like, wow, I was like, you are so into this. I love it. And but even I realized, like, we were finally getting to the place of, we're gonna have, I was never into the Clone Wars cartoon series, animated series, and every time I tried to watch, I couldn't get into it. I watched the final season, which just, I was into it more than I was in the originals. And so, but now, she's, now that she's getting into Ahsoka a little more, I'm like, we're gonna have to watch all the Clone Wars, because you see Ahsoka, from youth, and she's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, that's our life pretty soon. But we talk about on the podcast a lot about the Marvel series and the Star Wars series, and Disney Plus cutting back and scaling, trying to make these series seem special. And with Ahsoka right now, the feedback is so interesting to me, because I agree with the people who there's something, the pacing of the show seems to be the biggest hang up for people, which I totally get. I feel that it's a deliberate pace, it's purposeful, and I think there's that zen quality to Ahsoka that's the the kind of the, to me, the impetus for why they're pacing it the way they are. But considering that Ahsoka Tano is the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, and they have this connection, if you would have told me when I watched Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith how appreciative I would be of Anakin Skywalker, I would have said, you are out of your mind. Phantom Menace, I always chalked up, it's the first chapter of a story, it's exposition, has a great lightsaber fight at the end, fine. I struggle. There's things I liked about 2 and 3, Obi-Wan, Jango Fett, Palpatine. Like, there's things I like about episode 2 and 3. I struggled a lot with Anakin Skywalker, and I'll just say one word about episode 5 today is a word that is very, very, very important to me, which is the legacy. And the word legacy got mentioned today. I was like, son of a gun. And I was like, here I am. And, as a battle, Ahsoka has Anakin's legacy and his teachings, and that's what's inside of her. And I was like, I would never have thought my appreciation for would be at this level. Episode 5, Jen, when you get there. I mean, I would still recommend a couple of Rebels episodes before you,
Mhm.
but there's so many cool Star Wars things about it, and and to see the 7-year-old's reactions is really, and that's the thing. We talked with when we talked with Dave from Brandy and Dave, on his live stream, and he has that aversion to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'm just
Mhm.
like, she is Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka.
Mhm.
That is going, and Rebels is going to be her Star Wars. She likes
Yeah.
the movies, loves the movies, references the movies. She knows what's connecting to what in the moment, and so she hasn't watched the movies a lot, but still can connect it. But I think those 3 series: Rebels, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and Mandalorian. She loves Mandalorian. That's going to be her Star Wars of those 4 series. So when we talk about, the Marvel series and the Disney, it's the same
Mhm.
thing as how I felt about the prequels, but all the kids, that's their Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing right now.
Is episode 5 is not the finale,
No,
right?
it is
There's
not.
still more.
Yeah.
Because Val is saying she wishes she could talk about it because she wants to discuss theories. I will say, perhaps Frank needs to do a live on his own before I catch up, and then y'all can talk about it.
Yeah, if
And
I could take it to the resort, I mean, you guys have seen enough of us this week, I think, especially if you're a resort guest, that I'm like, I could go live on Saturday, but we'll see.
8 episodes, okay. All right, maybe I'll catch up by then. I think I will definitely catch up before I start Marvel movies. So there's
Yeah.
that. So I think
And to say, while we are next week's theme park, well, I guess the 21st, September the 21st, that episode of Theme Park Thursday will be about our meetup in Walt Disney World last weekend. I will say, part of my the dilemma I ran into was I wanted desperately to find the right piece of Ahsoka merch for the 7-year-old, and I felt like
mhm,
I could not.
yeah,
So I guess that's what Christmas will be for.
yeah. I think I think everyone would hang out on Saturday with you.
Yeah.
Were you actually
Did
planning on
Jennifer say? Did I say seen enough of us? I've seen enough. Oh, seen enough of
like
us.
us?
As in
Yeah,
me and
you're
you.
saying
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, you've seen
I was
enough
like,
of
oh,
us.
I
Yeah,
thought you were saying about them. I was like, I'm not saying
right.
about you.
But he's saying never. They've never seen enough. Um, Lexi, was I actually planning on starting the Marvel movies? Yeah, I think 2 years ago,
Mhm.
maybe, I
Yeah.
said, "I'm gonna do a whole YouTube series where I watch each movie, and
Mhm.
then I talk about it, and it's gonna be
Mhm.
like a whole spin-off vlog thing." I haven't done it. And then sometimes I think about it, and I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm not gonna start now because it's Hallmark season soon," And here I am again, and now when we're back in the fall, I'm not doing it
Mhm.
now. Yeah, Hallmark season soon. I can't be doing that, so
Yeah, I think on the Marvel front, the 7-year-old has seen enough trailers. We've been going to the movies often enough of the Marvels that we're gonna watch the Ms. Marvel series. I
Mm,
think on Disney Plus
mhm,
before that movie comes out,
yeah.
because she seems to be into the preview of that movie. So I have a feeling we'll end up seeing that. So that'll be on the list. But we've been trying to give our YouTube channel a little attention lately. It has a whole Halloween playlist going on right now. I'm splitting up some of the video I took and putting it out there. We've been doing a lot of shorts. We're up to 700 subscribers apparently, unless it dropped again recently. So, we're moving onward. But Jen, if it comes to it, you might have to start watching Marvel movies so people can get the watch hours in of your reviews.
Maybe I'll see. I'm things are popping in my head for our destination Dillos, and so I'm like,
Huh.
oh, I want to say it. You know what? I'm gonna save it for whenever we do that. But I'm gonna add it to my post-its right in front here, and we'll go back to it. But I think something popped in and just popped out of my mind again, so
Destination
I'll have to
Dillos,
think about that.
Dillos Vacation Club. It's all,
I
it's
know it's
all.
all there. Oh, okay. Uh, so I also something we both watched was Shrinking,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
which if you're a Harrison Ford fan, you need to watch Shrinking.
Absolutely. I don't know how you can't. I really, back in the day,
Hmm.
Hollywood is such an interesting place in these. Well, now it's more interesting than ever.
Hmm.
But you know, Harrison Ford never did TV ever, and
Hmm.
he did one cameo in the Young Indiana Jones. Like you never saw him do anything. And so when he did this Yellowstone prequel and Shrinking, I was like, it is a brilliant move before the next Indiana Jones movie comes out to
Hmm.
get your face out there and make people fall in love with you in case they haven't been for a little while. Like, I just thought, and he's so great on Shrinking
Hmm.
that I really thought it was gonna, and maybe it is going to in the digital release and all of that because I hear it's doing well now compared to the box office. But he's so good on that show. The show overall is good.
Hmm.
There's a thing that I always talk about with friends over the years of, when things get too real, it becomes uncomfortable to watch sometimes. And
Hmm.
I love the characters on that show, but they make some choices that I'm like, I don't know if I can watch this show anymore.
Hmm.
The choices you're making right now. And there's a little bit of that. And it's my own uncomfortability that I'm dealing with. But the show is great. And what was great about that show is that it got better throughout the season.
Yeah.
It didn't like start strong and then even out in the middle and then end strong. It was on a rise the whole time.
Yeah. Lexi, we have watched Morning Glory. I haven't watched that but in a
Oh, that's when
while.
he's a newscaster. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
For a while,
But
yeah.
I recall that movie and recall liking it a lot. Val, I missed it up higher. You asked if we could do an episode about New York apartments because you have so many questions. Are you talking specifically about New York real estate? Obviously, you're talking about in TV shows and movies, but like the behind the scenes of where they're actually filming, or what are you wondering? I mean, I know you have a lot of questions, but like, what's a main
Like, do
thing
we have
there?
to live stream from like outside the corner where a friend's apartment is to
I
like
mean,
talk about?
probably.
I
You
you know
probably do
I
need to
for
do that.
some reason this is not a vlog idea or a live stream idea. It's been in my head forever. But and I don't know who's gonna watch this. But
Right.
maybe it'll be the movie club someday, and then I'll have to do the live stream. Maybe that will do it. There's a 1961 movie called The Apartment with
Mhm.
Jack Lemmon, who it might be top 5 actors for me all time. Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine.
Mhm.
And but it has like Mad Men took a lot of inspiration from that movie.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and Matthew Weiner cites that as one of the big, resources to create the world. And it's such a good movie. But it has, the exterior shots are very New York and like, I don't know if it's 61st Street or 62nd Street by the park, but you could walk by the apartment and all that. I was like, do I need to do like a walking tour of the scenes from the apartment? I'm like, who's gonna watch this? I don't know, but I want to walk past it. So then I feel like, well, I should get the content if I want to walk by these locations.
That what would be good for Destination Dillos is that
Uh-huh.
we start a double-decker tour
Oh,
thing in the city,
mm-hmm.
and we do a whole thing.
I'll get Papa Dillo to drive that double decker bus.
You do it in a second. Um,
But
okay.
those are things that cross my mind. I'm
The
like, I don't know who's
apart
gonna watch me walk past the apartment exterior from the apartment, but
I
I
think
want to
anybody.
do it, so I should get the
Yeah.
content for it.
You should just do it. Just do it. People, if you build it, they will come. So just do it, and people will watch. The apartment, though, here's what it did. You said the title, the apartment, and boom, flashback
Uh-huh.
to my college, and I was like, why am I picturing that? Huh. I wonder if I watched that in my cinema class that I took
Oh.
in college. Because
Mhm.
I'm like, why am I picturing myself in that classroom all of a sudden?
And that movie, while with some of its old time movie tropes, it is considered a romantic comedy. It is a movie that I have watched on a JetBlue flight. So, as we know, I often watch romance-based movies
That's
on
true.
JetBlue flights,
And
including
sometimes we
last
choose
week
the
where
same
Jen and
movie.
I, not seeing each other's screens, watching the same exact movie.
We should like play that game from now on when we're both on a plane. Like scroll through. All right, scroll through and you have to choose one movie. Okay, let's see. What will it be?
What are they
Super
gonna pick out of
interesting.
all these movie
Mhm.
options? And then on the flight back, they didn't have anything available.
And then they were like, "We're gonna go to Providence." We're like, "We have no TVs. We're going to Providence. What's happening?"
Frank's in the middle seat. He's gonna lose his mind. It's totally fine.
Times.
Well, that will wrap up this edition of Dillo's Pop. I didn't have the thing ready,
You didn't
but
do
I
it.
did. I did. I didn't have the logo, the thing to pop up on the screen. This edition of Dillo's Pop. There we go. I gotta go that way. We'll probably do another one again. This is technically a numbered episode, so this puts us closer to our. This will when it drops in the audio feed, we will be one episode closer to 300. I think this puts us about 5 away. I have to do an official count, even though I did count this morning, and I have promptly forgotten what it is. But I think we're 5 away. So that 300th episode is the podcast will be coming up next month. This live stream dropping into the audio feed as a podcast episode some point in the next couple of days. But thanks everyone for hanging out and listening to us talk for these hour and 10 minutes about streaming shows you may or may not have watched over the summer. Until next time, she's Jen and I'm Frank. Bye-bye.
Deuces.